From Six Forks Studios, located in beautiful Raleigh, North Carolina, this is the Hardison Cochran Attorneys at Law Podcast. The podcast is about North Carolina personal injury, workers' compensation, and disability law. Now here's your host, Bill Campbell.
Hello and welcome to the Hardison Cochran Podcast. This episode is going to be pretty straightforward. It's going to be about 5 minutes of Ben Cochran talking about drug tests and workers' compensation. He'll start right after this disclaimer. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship between you and Hardison & Cochran Attorneys at Law. Hardison & Cochran does not accept new clients without first obtaining a signed agreement. The information shared in this podcast is for information purposes and should not be intended or taken as legal advice as to yours or anyone else's legal matter. If you have a legal matter, contact an attorney about your specific set of circumstances.
We get a lot of calls from folks who've been injured on the job and their employer has asked them to take a drug test. And so the first question that we get sometimes is, am I required to take the drug test? Well, the simple answer to that is yes. If you are asked by your employer to take a drug test following an injury, then you do need to take the drug test. The reason why I say that is because they have policies and procedures that they've already created, and a lot of their insurance companies actually require them to have drug tests at the time of the injury. So since their insurance company has asked them to do it, they are now asking their employees to do it when they report an injury. Obviously, one of the reasons why this is done is because they want to determine whether or not there was an intoxicating substance in the injured employee's system at the time of the injury. So as a matter of course, you do have to take the drug test. Now, a lot of times we get a follow-up question, and that question is, well, what if you know you're going to fail it? The simple answer to that is no, don't take the drug test. The reason why I say that is if you know that you are not going to pass the drug test, then once you do have an intoxicating system, or if you have some type of intoxicating agent in your body, then more likely than not, they're going to deny the claim as a rubber stamp. So if you know that you are going to come positive in results, whether it be marijuana or cocaine or even alcohol, then more likely than not, you should not take the drug test because you don't want to create that evidence which is going to result in a rubber stamp denial. A lot of times we also get a telephone call, and it's been 3 or 4 days after the injury, and now the employer wants the individual to take a drug test. So when we look at those facts, you say, okay, well, do I have to take a drug test now? Once again, I think you come back, you look at the policies and procedures that are noted in your employee handbook as to when you're required to take a drug test. When you come in and you look at those circumstances, though, as it relates to a workers' compensation claim, if it's 3 days after the injury, then there's going to be no correlation between your injury on the job and the drug test because it's been 3 days. So if it's been 3 days, then that drug test is not going to have any factor in your workers' compensation case. However, once again, we come to that question of, well, do I take the drug test if I know I'm going to fail it? At this point, more likely than not, your employer is asking you to take this drug test to see if there are intoxicating agents in your bloodstream. And if there are, more likely than not, they'll terminate you. So it's almost like it gives them the ability to cut ties with you and not have it be related to the workers' compensation claim. Now let's looking at it and you say, okay, well, let's look at a different scenario. What if I took the drug test and then I failed it? Am I barred from workers' compensation, or essentially have I lost my case? Well, the answer to that is no, not necessarily. The reason that I say that is because the law is not whether or not you had an intoxicating substance in your bloodstream or whether or not you had consumed some type of intoxicating substance. The question is whether or not you were impaired due to that substance And that's what resulted in your injury. So you can obviously have a positive marijuana test, had smoked weed 2 or 3 weeks before the injury, still come up positive. And the insurance company, they're going to deny your claim more likely than not. However, it does not necessarily mean that you do not have a case that is going to be successful at the Industrial Commission. Once again, it's going to be the defendants who are going to have to show that you were impaired to the extent that it resulted in your injury. So just because you have marijuana in your system or cocaine in your system does not indicate that you were impaired. They will need either a legal test that identifies impairment. Most commonly, we see this when someone has consumed alcohol and they've had a breathalyzer. And if the breathalyzer indicates that they are above the legal limit of impairment, then those claims are commonly denied and the insurance company is successful. That is not what we see when someone shows positive for marijuana. The main reason for that is that there is not currently a test that is legally recognized to show impairment of marijuana. So the defendants with the insurance company and the employer, they would actually have to have witnesses that say that they believe that you were impaired due to the use of some type of illicit subject, such as marijuana or cocaine. So in those situations, when you look at it, even though you have tested positive, that does not mean that you are going to be barred from compensation. So if someone has told you that, I definitely encourage you to give us a call.
We'd like to thank you for listening to the Hardison and Cochran Attorneys at Law podcast. If you would like a free consultation about you or a loved one's legal situation, please go to lawyernc.com and fill out the contact form or live chat with us. For a full list of episodes, please visit lawyernc.com/podcast.